So we're absolutely delighted. Our first coffee break back of 2024. And actually we were just saying, Petra give a wave, how timely this is because Monday was Blue Monday. It's meant to be the most miserable day of the entire year. I think January has kind of really two sides to it, doesn't it? You're either, raring to go for the new year, setting new goals, setting expectations, starting diets and everything like that, or you're just in a big old grump and just can't be bothered, which is kind of where I'm at the moment, kind of in hermit mode. So we've got Petra here with us today. I'm really excited. Her whole ethos and values of her business, I think, are very much in line with what we're trying to achieve, just trying to put a bit of a pep in our step in these first couple of weeks of the year. So as I said, really interactive session. If you can take yourself off mute and interrupt, please feel welcome to, or you can use the chat box. So Petra, over to you.
Thank you, Katie, and lovely to see some of you, but certainly to hear you as well on this cold day. I too have a blanket on my lap because it is a pretty cold midday. And so I'm excited to kind of spend 20, 30 minutes with you, just talking you through some of my thoughts on, goal setting yourself up for the year. I mean, there's so many statistics, aren't there, about like, resolutions we don't stick to them and nothing works. And in a way, I'm like, are we collectively all just agreeing with that? And so we sort of go, oh, well, I'm not even going to try, right? Because nobody sticks to them anyway. So hopefully this will give you a bit of a reframe on how to think about, your well-being, your happiness. So not just like, what do I want to do, but also how do I want to feel while doing it? And I'll tell you a bit of my story and give you a little intro to help you maybe provoke a little bit of new thinking. So I've got a few slides, and again, a lot of them are just pictures and stuff to bring a few points home. And I know some of you are just on audio, but I'll be describing some of this as well. And so to kick off, before I kind of outline what I'm going to cover, these are some of the statistics I'm referring to, right? So they say that 43% of us give up on our goals by February, which is in 2 weeks' time. 23% have already quit because after the first week, they'll be over it. 64% after the first month, and yay, 9% of us will stick to some of those goals, which are striking numbers. I think there's different statistics depending on where you're looking or who you're asking. And so today, these are the types of things I guess I want to just challenge our thinking about. Let's think about goals differently. Let's challenge some of our conditioning about what we should want as well, and think a little bit more about what we actually want, because I think it's about alignment of those goals that kind of helps the most. Thanks, Katie, for sharing my LinkedIn with the group here. So kind of go beneath, what do we really want? And then, of course, it's sustainable action that needs to be very deeply personal to each of us. So to warm us up, just for the sake of today, and as Katie said, it's an interactive session, I'd love you to jump into the chat box and just let us know, like, what is one kind of wish or hope for 2024? It might be that you've already set a concrete goal, or it might just be a bit looser than that. I want to feel fulfilled in an area or invest in my relationships, or it could be work, career related. Let's just get a few ideas into that chat box, because then we'll have something concrete to be working with. And I'm very open to interruptions, unmuting yourself, jumping in. We will have loads of Q&A, but please do jump in throughout. You're going to change career to do something totally different. Beautiful. A better work-life balance. This is always an interesting one, right? Because what does that even mean? And does anyone ever achieve the perfect balance the whole time, right? It's often that we do a little bit of this at different stages of our life. Adopt a flexible working pattern. Beautiful. Just great to see what other people are thinking of as well, hopefully in a new job. Taking rest time and saying no. Also, that's a huge one, right? Boundaries and saying no. And it's often a bit deeper than just saying no, right? Because it triggers up kind of our whole life story and expectations. Embracing a year of change, home, business, family, beautiful. British citizenship, wonderful. It does require actual study time, doesn't it? And some deadlines, I think. Taking care of yourself, beautiful. So let's just hold those in mind as I talk you through a little bit of what I've learned in my story and hopefully a little bit of a reframe that then we can discuss together towards the end of the session. Here's a little bit about me. I'm a psychotherapist and a coach. I'm a keynote speaker. I host a couple of podcasts. I had my first book came out last year. And I run a business that's all about strategy and training with companies around creating mentally healthy cultures. I've got a master's in dynamics of human development, so hopefully can answer any questions that you might have about where you get stuck in your goals. Now, the reason I kind of kick off with this bit of the introduction is because it's actually very extremely different to what my life started out as. And there was some hints there in the description of kind of my background. And so I was actually born and raised in a very alternative way. These are my parents. I know I look just like my dad. These are my siblings. I imagine you can spot me in the lineup through that lineup there. So I'm one of 5 siblings. We grew up in community. I grew up in India, Brazil, Russia, Kenya. I'm based in London right now. I know my accent confuses people as well. But kind of grew up with lots of variety, lots of fun, lots of music. But there was a dark side. So when you're born into something, that's your normal. You just think that that's how people show up and that's how it goes, right? It's only later that you kind of look around and compare yourself, maybe as a teenager, to thinking, is this actually normal? Is this what other people are experiencing as well? And so I found out kind of later on that I was actually born and raised in the notorious Children of God cult. And so there's loads of stuff out there. I'm not encouraging any kind of Googles because it won't be good for your well-being, but really kind of a dark turn of kind of coercive control, very strong expectations of how you should live your life. And interestingly, every new year, we would sit around, sometimes 80 or 100 people, and we would have to go around and we would have to speak out loud to that many people about what our intentions were for the year. But of course, they were very heavily influenced by our belief system and what we should be saying, right? So we didn't really have this freedom to be like, I really want to get an education, for example. We didn't go to school as kids because the idea was that the world was going to end and who needed school, right? And so it's interesting to note like how our earliest experiences about goal setting or about expectations can still influence how we are as adults. Is everyone with me? I only see a few people on video. Give me a thumbs up if you're with me. I know I'm jumping into a few things here. Thank you. And this picture captures how dark my life got. So as a teenager, I was extremely lost and kind of questioning, you know, what was truth and what wasn't. And I hadn't gone to school as a kid and always had a very clear shared mission with the kind of organization, but was misaligned inside and wasn't able to be my true self. And what I got really good at was living a double life. And I think many of us can relate to this idea of wearing a mask, depending on which environment we're in, right? We have to show up in different ways. And so interestingly, this is not the picture that captures when I wanted to take my own life. This is. And I kind of highlight those contrasting images just to challenge what we think the struggle or poor mental health looks like, right? So I know for many of us, it's the times when maybe on the inside we feel the most depleted and the most sort of empty or sad, whatever might be going on for us, that on the outside we show up as if we're good, we've got this and everything's okay. I've got a great goal for the year, right? Not really understanding the bigger picture that might be going on in our life. You know, this is a short session, but, you know, I ended up leaving the cult and I had 2 young kids with my now ex-husband, but I kind of moved in to this absolutely new situation at the age of 22. Still didn't have an education, still didn't have an idea of kind of the direction that I was going in. And it led to some pretty dark places. So kind of spiraling into depression, addiction, poor mental health. And the reason I tell this bit of the story is because I have learned that we're misaligned with the goals that we actually want on the inside, but we are trying to look for goals that we should be setting or that other people think we should be kind of achieving, it becomes this kind of disconnect, and it can really affect our well-being. So when we go to set a goal, and we work really hard and then we keep failing at it and we get very frustrated with ourselves for not being strong enough or disciplined enough. Sometimes the question is that the right goal, right? Is it actually aligned with the highest version of yourself and your potential? So here's a couple of things that I learned to just move us into some advice, hopefully, or at least provoke your thinking about how you might approach some of those goals that you've set there. So I learned that, and neuroscience now backs this up, that we can actually teach ourselves to be happy. So for me, I actually gave myself a year's deadline to experiment with all the things people said were good for me. And the reason I say experiment is because it's not a one size fits all. Somebody might swear by meditation, for example. Someone else might find that that's really difficult to do while they're raising 2 young kids, for example, or doing some other things. And that's okay. I feel like we're in a world that, even the self-help world, that makes everything into like a 3-step plan, right? Here's your framework or your formula, and just do this, and then everything will be okay. And no wonder we're feeling more stressed, overwhelmed, thinking, this doesn't fit for me, or why am I failing at this sort of topic? I've learned from my own story. So I ended up, no education, 2 young kids, not much time or direction or guidance to do anything, to getting sober, getting a master's degree, building up my career, and now running my own business, which is completely aligned with my values. And people often ask, well, how did you get from A to B, right? And of course, it isn't just from A to B. It's like the change curve, which you might be familiar with, where at the beginning you're making changes, but it feels like you're in this, nothing's changed, right? Maybe you're going to the gym, or maybe you're talking to a friend or investing in yourself, but you still feel maybe heavy or overwhelmed. But over time, it is those small actions that the change curve kind of moves completely into a different life. And my life certainly is different, the one that was set out for me. Focusing on what's in your control. And at the beginning, for me, it was just how I was thinking. So focusing on what's one thing that I'm grateful for was really difficult when I was in a space where I thought I was a victim of my past and, in a really dark place. So it's always kind of useful to separate out what's in our control and what isn't, and just start there. There is always something that's in our control. Thanks, Helen, for your comment. I think everyone probably agrees with that one, right? That it can be really difficult to ask for help. Really difficult, sometimes impossible. Sometimes we don't even know how to bring it up or say anything. Helen, I wonder if you want to add anything to that, if there are any times that you do ask for help.
Like my whole kind of persona, my whole life has been like, I'm like strong and independent. I'm determined. I do what I say I'm going to do. So when I need help, it's almost like I'm embarrassed to ask for it. So like I lost my job last year, and it took me ages to start reaching out to people in my network. It took a long time until I had a coffee with somebody, and they said, like, stop all of this doom scrolling on LinkedIn, stop applying on LinkedIn. You have to reach out to your network. And that's when I joined this network. And that's when I started to kind of think a little bit differently. But my ideal outcome would have been for me to get a job by myself and then tell everybody how fabulous I was. Really.
And what do you think you were worried about? Because I think you're reflecting what a lot of us feel.
I was embarrassed. I was totally embarrassed that I lost my job. It was my whole identity. So then putting myself out there and telling people, actually, I'm struggling and I need some help. I just didn't want people to judge me and think I was a failure.
And I think we're all nodding, right? Either externally or internally, thinking we don't want to be judged. And what you said at the beginning was like our identity as strong, independent women specifically, right? And if that's what we've had to, for many of us, fight for, right? And be in the all male boardrooms, or be in the situations where there's those microaggressions or obvious aggression, the whole list, right? And I'm still seeing that happen very kind of present in our day to day. So we fight to be a strong, independent woman, perhaps as role models for our kids or siblings or whoever else. And recently I've gone through a breakup, and it was interesting that a lot of my mother, my friends, nobody asked me how I was coping or if I was okay or did I need any help. And I was like, whoa, why is that? Isn't like a breakup a big deal? Like, and moving and all of these things. And I realized that even now I can present as somebody who's, I can be rational. This thing happened, but it's good and I'm fine. And, and more than one thing can be true at once, right? See, we can be a strong, independent woman, and we need backup and community, and we're not meant to be an island and do everything ourselves, right? And I think we get into this black and white thinking. We're either completely independent and strong, or we're weak and can't handle anything, right? And the world kind of perpetuates that idea rather than, ooh, life happens somewhere in the middle. That's generally where it happens. Oh, lovely. That sounds really tough, Stephanie. Just having those moments in life where we get destabilized, right? And we all have them. And it could be, a divorce, a job loss, some sort of change. Stephanie, do you mind sharing just kind of what got you through that time?
It was a few years back now, and I think it was the company went through a really torrid time, and I was one of about 40 that left. But that was when I think Katie approached me to join the ETW network, and I wasn't as quick to join in, I think, as Helen. It took me about 3 or 4 years before I actually started speaking up and really joining in. But I very quickly, I think, realised it was an opportunity. I'd been thinking about going contracting, but hadn't been able to do it because I was in a permanent role, and I seized that opportunity. So I did use it to then sort of springboard into something else and do something else that I wouldn't have done previously.
And can I ask, like, why do you think, like, in hindsight, it took you a while to connect and maybe speak up?
I've just naturally never done it. I find it really difficult to network with people, to go out. Bizarrely, I'm not a very social person when I'm in a social setting, even though people always say, "Oh, you're really sort of extrovert and outgoing." I kind of put on a persona, I think. Well, no, I don't think. I know I do put on a persona, and it's not natural to me to sort of go out there and sort of approach people and talk to people. And I'd say it's only in the last sort of 18 months, 2 years, that I've actually gone out and actively done that.
And I think everyone can relate to that being a persona, but I'm an extrovert, and being with people is maybe more natural for me than my sister, for example, who's an introvert. But it's still a skill that you have to develop. It's still a skill to ask questions or be brave when you feel like they might judge me, or And so I find that whatever our natural state is, networking, asking for help, like all of this stuff, I didn't know how to do this before. It's taken sort of 2 decades of learning, experimenting, trying things, getting out of my comfort zone and learning from it, having that, what they call a growth mindset, right? To adapt and learn from it. Thank you so much, Stephanie. And would you find, if I can ask you just one last question, that once you did start asking, reaching out to networks, that things felt better or easier, or is it still a struggle?
It's definitely, the more you do it, the easier it becomes. And I think one of the things that was stopping me was the fact I didn't know what to say and I felt really awkward. But I think once you realise that everybody feels exactly the same way, that's a massive help. And you just think, well, what's the worst anyone's going to say to me? They're probably just going to sort of like exchange some pleasantries and then move on. I mean, no one's rude to you if you're networking. They'll always give you time, and some people will go out of their way to be supportive. And I've definitely seen that really recently on this specific network when I've asked for help.
Beautiful. And I think a lot of people have actually gone a few steps backwards in the skills of connection and networking and reaching out. Some people, if you're in a network, you get to practice more, but through COVID and, a lot of the video or virtual kind of setups, for somebody to say, hey, and I try and do this quite often. Do you want to meet for coffee? Shall we meet in town? Where are you on a certain date, whatever? Just to keep that practice up as well of actually being with other humans, right? So let me just give you a little outline of that well-being piece, because a few of you have said, better work-life balance or saying no and things like that. So for me, goal setting is about aligning your goal to what you really want. And the first time I got asked what I want, I was training to be a coach, and we have to practice on each other and stuff. And the practice session was, what do you really want? And I had never, ever been asked that question. And so my brain went, and I think many, many women and, with our conditioning might relate. I went to, what should I do? What do I need to do? Those were my two kind of primary responses, rather than what do I really want? That was like way down the list to something that I'd never even thought of. And so it was in asking that question in that kind of safe environment that I realized that I hadn't given myself permission, or never been shown permission by anyone else, to actually think about, what do I need and what do I want beyond, husbands and children and friends and family expectations and all the rest of it. So sometimes goal setting is about asking ourselves the right question. And some of you might be familiar with the kind of definitions or information around mental health and well-being, but this is actually the definition of mental health according to the World Health Organization. And so it's a state of well-being in which an individual realizes their potential, can cope with the normal stresses of life, and can make a contribution to their community. And the reason I highlight this is, if we want to achieve our potential or our goals, we need to think about setting the conditions. So setting the conditions that would enable us to do those things, right? So whether that's our environment, whether that's our relationships, our friendships, who are the people we surround ourselves with, our health habits, like do we invest in our physical body, our mental health, in order to be able to do these things. And I've kind of highlighted the word normal, because the stresses in our life, have kind of gone up, like the threshold of what's going on for many of us has gone up. But also that piece about contribution to our community. Sometimes we get very stuck in like self mode, like I need to achieve these goals, I need to be disciplined, I need to execute, rather than thinking, when we give back, when we're connected to others, when we can share our goals and ideas and ask for help, it kind of elevates everybody and enables us to achieve them more often. So at the beginning of my journey, those were the questions I would ask myself: is what do I need to feel safe and to feel like I'm able to boost my confidence or connect with others, whatever that might be. And then here's some kind of food for thought or kind of self-assessment for you as well. This is what we refer to as the mental health continuum. And in my work in businesses, so many times the mental health conversation or balance conversation is, what do we do when we're struggling or in crisis? Who do we go to? What do we do? But actually, a lot of people are in survival mode. So we're kind of in this, what's going to happen next? It's really hard to be creative and think creatively about our future and our goals when we're stuck in survival mode. And of course, the work I do is, how do we think about what helps us thrive and excel? So our cultures, our teams, us as individuals, what do we need to, because that's where we can be creative, we can be more disciplined, we can actually perform well. And you can see in the blue boxes, there's some clues there to how you know that you're in one of these sort of categories. And checking in with ourselves might be thinking about, our whole selves. How am I sleeping? Am I able to be honest with people? Do I feel good about the work that I'm doing? Do I have energy? Do I feel joy? Am I in flow? And so my question to you is, do your goals and your hopes for 2024 align with this kind of energy? And if they feel quite big, the breakdown is sort of, how do I get my energy to a place where I can perform in the way that I want to, or achieve my potential? And I don't mean like conventional ideas about what success is. Your potential might be a really great relationship with your kids. I've got 2 teenagers now. And so that's part of my potential, is being able to communicate and connect with them effectively. So those are the pieces to think about. And so finally, just two more slides, and then I'll just open up the floor for any questions or how you might want to apply some of this to your ideas. Check your shoulds, what should I do, and your conditioning. What are the social expectations that are telling me I want this thing? Because that's going to give you information about whether you're setting the right goal that you're more likely to achieve. Oh, I'm with you there, Helen. I think we all have those little things, don't we? That when our emotions are high, either whether it's digital, right? So how do we avoid our emotional state? By distraction, by Netflix, by sugar, by food, by alcohol, whatever it might be. And what's the main complaint that I hear in businesses when it comes to well-being or mental health is, I just haven't got time. I just haven't got enough hours in the day. There isn't enough time, blah, blah, blah. We all have that little alert on our device that says, you have spent 5 hours a day on your device, right? Or whatever it might be. So I actually would radically challenge the notion of time. And actually, when you run your own business and you feel really aligned with your dream and vision, there's always enough time because you're excited about what you do and you're enjoying it, right? And it's easy to say no to other stuff. So check your shoulds and conditioning, your dreams and your visions. Like, actually think, what do you really want? And that's a whole exercise in itself that you can kind of brainstorm from a work perspective and career. But the thing I like to do at the beginning of the year is I imagine the end of 2024 and that I'm looking back on the year. And I think, ooh, how do I want to feel at the end of the year? And so if I want to feel like I've accomplished things, like I'm well connected with people, like I'm healthy, like I'm connected with my kids, whatever it might be, well, then that's what I'm going to work backwards from. And so my goals are less like, must do this, must do that, and more, how do I want to feel? And then the other stuff kind of falls into place. So what are the conditions that are going to help me get there? And that's about your well-being, your balance, your reflection time. This is the bit that people are not doing much of, but really helps. And for me, I do it in the morning. I just might journal or something and just think, oh, let me just pause. Am I feeling good about the direction I'm going in and the things that I'm doing or not? And then finally, and I'll go into some of your comments and just open the floor. This is a me quote, but it isn't about bubble bath well-being. If you take a bubble bath, that's totally cool. But what I mean by that is this idea that self-care is always like, oh, let me sit back and, go to the spa and have a bubble bath and read a book. Those things are great. But the rest of this is also well-being. It's having brave conversations. It's radical honesty about what you want, who you are, and your responsibility when it comes to creating change. And it's about taking brave action. So that brave action might be the tiniest thing, which is simply texting a friend or picking up the phone to somebody to ask them a brave question or put yourself out there. It can kind of be so many different things. So I'm going to open the floor now, and Katie, you've got some great thoughts there just around what that conditioning could be, and then sharing ideas, Stephanie, about your vision board and any other questions that you might have. I'm going to stop that share so I can see everyone, and yeah, just open the floor. I mean, Katie, did you want to just speak to your comment there, because I think it's really useful.
I noticed that, and this is probably says a lot about my personality, but when friends or family decide to go on diets, or they're changing their life in some way, they're going vegan, or they're looking for a new job, or they're doing this particular thing, often I can think, well, why am I not doing that then? If they're doing that, then maybe I should be doing that as well. So then I've already put this kind of unrealistic expectation on my shoulders, which I'm clearly not invested in because it wasn't my choice in the first place. So I'm setting myself up for failure. Social media, I think, it plays a massive part in that as well. You know, following influencers, whether it's fitness or food or anything like that. The first couple of weeks of the new year was just constant setting goals, ins and outs of 2024. And then you're thinking, okay, maybe I need to be doing this as well. But actually, as I said in the comment, you know, comparison is the thief of joy.
Thief of
I just
joy
think,
you got there, yeah.
you know, these have to be personal. Okay, fine. If you've got a friend that's got a, you know, you want to walk, I don't know, 10K or something, and that's your goal together, that's fantastic. But they have to be your own, and they have to be personal to you. I think that's where I'm really falling into at the moment, is adding other people's expectations onto my own.
You've got lots of nods around the virtual room.
I think it's natural, isn't it, though? That's kind of natural. We're just all kind of, you know, seeing what everyone else is doing and thinking, yeah, they look great or they must feel great. Let's get involved. And actually, it just needs to be personal to us. And however small as well, just sometimes getting through the day is, I've actually realised that, like in December, I think I do it to myself every year. By the end of December, I feel well and truly like I'm hanging by a thread. And, you know, just kind of thinking just one more day, one more day. But actually, you know, as long as you're getting through that day, we're keeping healthy, like, you know, fit and active and you know, mentally stable, that's enough sometimes, just kind of in this surviving stage and then coming into to thriving.
Beautiful. Yeah, I mean, we used to compare to the people on our street, right? Keeping up with the Joneses was about like our neighbor, right, who had the better car or whatever it might be. And now it's just the entire world we can compare with. And I loved it when I heard the saying, we compare our insides to other people's outsides, right?
Yeah.
So they've got a whole, like, you know, self-doubt and imposter syndrome and all the stuff that goes on, insecurities, all the things, right? And yet we're like, oh my God, they look so cool. They seem so happy. They seem to have everything. What is wrong with my life, right? It just exaggerates it in a really big way. So Rachel, the idea about curating your social media feeds to avoid unreal comparisons, but also self-awareness, like if we're in a dip in a not so good place, maybe stepping back from it or having even stricter boundaries rather than like, that's the time when we want to distract and look at it all and be like, oh, you know, avoid maybe doing the work.
Yeah, I was just going to add to that very briefly. I also do belong to some very, very supportive groups. So if things start going a bit downhill, I can drop into a really supportive group, and that really helps too.
Nice. So building your own environment and your community. In thinking, I'm open to any questions or comments, but in kind of thinking about maybe the concepts that I've thrown out there, is there any way you'd like to shift maybe how you're setting your goals or thinking about them differently?
I would like to say something about that. I was just talking to another member of this community earlier on, and we were talking about job opportunities in general. And I said, I need to clarify what I really want from a job. I said, because I want, you know, I'd like a supportive manager, and I'd like growth opportunities, and I'd like the people environment to be good, and I'd like not to be micromanaged and have sort of flexibility and autonomy. And she said to me, and you don't believe you can have all of them in the same time? And that kind of made me realize that's part of my limiting and conditioning beliefs that go, no. And I said to her, no, I don't think I can have them all, to be honest. I'm more of a pessimist generally, but I said, like, I think I can have 2 or 3, but not all of them. So it's interesting. I don't know if anybody else feels sort of similar when they're looking at opportunities like that.
I think having spoken to a lot of the members over the years, Andrea, I think people get to a certain point in their searches where they start giving up on their ideals, and they're just kind of thinking, at this point, I'm so desperate for a job, I'll forget the rest. And actually, the other member was right. You should be going into kind of new opportunities with the mindset that hopefully the organization will be a good place for you to thrive. You're not going to be micromanaged. You know, these are just small pockets. These are, you know, very, very small numbers, hopefully, where you won't get that. So I just think definitely keep a positive mindset around the job market, because you shouldn't be letting these kind of absolute musts fall off your tick list.
So what are your non-negotiables is how I would put that. So of
Yeah.
the list, are there two, like even when you go and interview, you can't tell if your manager is going to be a micromanager, can you? You can ask all the questions, but you can't fully proof yourself against some of those things. But then the question is, if you're in an environment, what is in your control when you're in the environment to manage upwards, to be clear, to have boundaries, to communicate effectively? It's not always fun, but there is scope sometimes, if it's not a totally toxic environment, to ask for what we need. A lot of women don't know how to ask for what we need, right? Or to be clear about it, especially if there's pressures to succeed and, you know, be easy and get on with it and all the things. So those are the questions I would ask, is like, what's in your control? How can you practice as well?
Very true. That's really good feedback. Thank you both.
Anyone else?
I think the what's in your control, Petra, is a very fair point as well, because I think often we are all guilty of getting frustrated or letting, sweating the small stuff of things that really just don't matter. They shouldn't matter at all. But for some reason, we let them become huge, massive deals. And I don't know whether that's pressure that we've put on ourselves or outside expectations. But yeah, I think there needs to be some kind of art into letting it go.
Well, there is, and there's a great book called Letting Go somewhere on my shelf. Here it is. I would recommend this to anyone. The Pathway of Surrender, David Hawkins, Letting Go.
Okay.
But that's not to be confused with being a pushover. Let me just say
Yes.
that out loud. It's not to be confused. But I've been into businesses, or back when I worked in education, and you would have people who would spend 80% of their energy complaining about all the things that are wrong and kind of using their energy to discuss or focus on the things that were not in their control anyway, right? And so I would want to check my influences, check my habits and what is in my control, and then think, is there a small bit of change that I can help create in a kind of using that energy for good? And if not, because there are some places where it's not going to make a difference, it's weighing up like what's good for my mental health and well-being. And sometimes that means leaving situations or making more drastic decisions at times. I want to check in on work-life balance, because two or three of you at the beginning were kind of like, I want to have more balance. And I'm curious, what does that mean to people? It'll be different to everyone. And maybe I can offer some tips around that, because it's not clear. When you say work-life balance, what are you even working towards? Do you know the specifics of what that means to you? Is it, I want 2 hours in the evening that is protected? Or is it something very different? And we've just had Needy come back on.
Yeah,
Sorry,
I thought I'd answer that.
Go ahead.
So like for me, work-life balance is, I mean, specifically when I go home from office, I put kids to bed and do all the house chores, etc. And then at night I'll sit on my bed and log in to finish off a few uncompleted tasks, or to make things easier for the next day in the office. And I want to minimize that, because I think that's my personal time. I should be doing other things. I should be reading books or watching telly or doing other house things. So I want to specifically focus on that. And so far I've managed to do well. I think out of the the 17 days we've had in the year so far, I've only I think logged in once in the evening, so which is better than what I did last year. So let's see how long that lasts. If I'm the 9% of the stats that you showed earlier, or if I'm the 43% of it.
And I guess it's working a few steps backwards to, like, in order to be able to have that boundary, right?
Mm-hmm.
There might be other things that are 10 steps before to think about, which is, what's meeting culture like in your workplace? Do you have to attend everything? Is there anything that can be challenged from within to give you the space to complete work during the day, right? is it a mindset thing, which is when we're in survival mode, we think everything's urgent. Oh, I have to do this today, otherwise tomorrow's going to be, right? Is that your mindset, or is that actual pressure from where you work, right? And so sometimes we have to check where things are coming from to just give us the best chance to be able to do those things.
Absolutely. I think it's a combination of things for me. Whilst my team is very understanding, but I also feel that I do have some flexibility given I've got younger kids. So I try to make up for that flexibility given to do, to try and be seen as doing extra, which I don't think it is really expected. Exactly. So I think I need to change my mindset and probably do be more efficient during the day, in order to have less of undone things in the evening. So definitely something I need to work on myself.
Yeah, sometimes it's about clarity around, priorities or urgency, and,
exactly.
it could be a few things there. Anyone else? Yeah, go ahead.
Just to speak to Nidhi's point there, that's really interesting that you put that additional pressure on yourself because you think, oh, I'm given this level of flexibility, therefore I need to work even harder to prove that that's kind of, that's working. And I had a colleague the other day, another member of V2W, say someone put a meeting in her diary for 3 o'clock, which is obviously when she's going for the school run, and she said, I can do it this once because I'll get my friend to pick the boys up, etc., etc. I just feel like I need, I can't say no to this. I need to kind of prove that I am able to be flexible here and there. And it's just, I don't know. I think, well, I guess the space that I'm in, I think I'm sure a lot of you know I'm pregnant. I'm due to go off in the middle of February, by the way. Big surprise.
You can't always tell though on video, can you?
So I think that's a funny mindset that I'm in at the moment, that I wonder at the moment, I'm telling all of our members, stick to your guns, you've been given this flexibility. You absolutely shouldn't, feel guilty about this or feel like, you're being held over a barrel. But I wonder if my mindset will change. And I think I'm so thankful to be given the opportunity for flexibility. I need to work extra hard to prove that it's worth it.
No, that's exactly it. And you shouldn't. I mean, as long as you're doing, I guess, the work that's been allocated to you, and if you're doing it. But yeah, you're right. I mean, we just have that guilty sort of, that guilt. Oh, maybe I should try and do more.
Yeah.
But yeah, something I think I need to think about more on how I can change my way of thinking.
Can I jump in as an employer on this one? I think there's a real tweak of mindset that everybody needs about what you're bringing to the party. It's not about what you're doing or how you're working differently, but what are you bringing? And I think if you have a look at what, you're clearly showing up, you're working hard, you're dedicated, you're really keen to do a good job. Just because you're being flexible doesn't necessarily mean someone's doing a massive favor. They may be feeling extremely grateful that you're still there, that you haven't decided it's all too hard and disappeared. They've still got your talent in the workplace, So I know it's hard because there's all these learned behaviors and societal norms and just the way workplaces work.
Absolutely, you're right. And sometimes we get fallen into the pressure of sort of, what your other colleagues are doing, so doing similar sort of job, but they may not have those immediate needs as you may do because of young children, etc. So you may want to, kind of copy, he or she is doing these many hours, I need to make up. But as you said, it's not all about that. It's about doing your work and being given flexibility. It's not all. Yeah,
it's getting yourself away from the fact that you're being given a favor, I think.
And it's also how are you comparing, because we compare to the explicit actions, so the little bits we see, but we're not seeing the implicit. We don't know if somebody else has given kind of additional time or a different setup. We don't always see that. So we're kind of our insecurity maybe is comparing to like what we think are bums on seats rather than maybe the reality. So that's where I would always say, like, check for clarity for a manager's expectations or an employer's, if we're unsure, and then you can kind of go, oh, okay, and then it does come down to our story and our expectations that were, given to us through family and education and all these things as well. Thank you, Helen. Any final questions? I know we've only got a few minutes left. Or comments?
Super.
Amazing. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Petra. I think, it's sometimes nice to have kind of more of an open discussion during these coffee breaks. It's nice that there's a structure and there's a topic, but I think sometimes we just all want to kind of, chat and share our own stories. And Rachel, it's so nice to hear things from different perspectives. I think often we can be all quite guilty of being a bit down and negative about things, but actually putting positive spins on things is really important. So appreciate everyone's input there. I did put Petra's LinkedIn address in the chat at the beginning. Her details are on the website as well, so please reach out to her. She's got loads and loads of thought leadership pieces on her website and her LinkedIn as well, so I'm sure she'll appreciate a connection. Thank you so much, Petra. It was really, really great to have you come on and kick off the coffee breaks for 2024. And we'll have to get you back at some point as well. So we have next week, we're actually getting together in person. So next Wednesday, I think it is the 24th, and we've got an evening session. I don't know if you remember just before summer last year, I think it was June last year, we did our first Let's Talk Women and Wealth event hosted at Elgin. So we're hosting one next Wednesday. St James's Place is where we're hosting it this time. We've got a fantastic panel of speakers. If you're members, you'll know Amelie, Debbie Mahanta, Alexandra Miles and Rebecca Maxwell Hislop. So talking about female empowerment, female finances, managing your money, investing, etc. So if you haven't registered already, please do. That looks to be a really nice session. And then the next coffee break is the 31st. So we're joined by Marguerite, who's one of our E2W coaches, and she's actually talking about fear of failure. So that'll be a really interesting one as well, and kind of embracing failure. So everything else is on the website. Please reach out if there's anything I can do in the meantime. I'm still here until probably the end of Feb, just a bit breathless and a bit slower, but I'm still here. So reach out if there's anything I can do for you. And thanks, or give you 5 minutes back of your lunch break.